being able to present to your customer a bid for a project. Before we get into these points, I would like to paint a picture for you of how this can all start. And it starts with a phone call from Mrs. Smith. When Mrs. Smith was doing some gardening one day, she noticed something peculiar about one of her shrub zones that's on a slope. She noticed a lot of wasted water and realized her sprinklers were more or less irrigating the air than the plants. Mrs. Smith did what she knew best and called an expert. She called her contractor and asked if they could come to see the site and examine what could be causing this. They got to the site and realized she was right. She does have a problem. She needed a little bit of retrofit work done with some maintenance on her system. Now, what Mrs. Smith's contractor does next depends on what they know as an expert. After all, not everyone is a black belt, so this can vary. A Band-Aid solution won't fix the problem completely, but an endgame solution will. This is why it always amazed me how two contractors can look at a single problem and produce two different solutions with either a new installation or maintenance fix. Contractor A, for example, is cheaper up front, produces Band-Aid fixes, installs what they know works, doesn't pay attention to the landscape design like the irrigation system or plant material, and they are more expensive in the long run because the irrigation system requires more maintenance. It's not an efficient system. After all, what do you expect if you had your boss's daughter install your irrigation system? Contractor B, on the other hand, is more expensive up front, but they remedy the problem because they install what is best. They install products around the design and are cheaper in the long run because the irrigation system requires less maintenance. This is a black belt's approach to fixing the problem for Mrs. Smith. She chose a more professional solution. This plan maximizes the efficiency of her irrigation system. In this situation, her contractor helped with all of her runoff and wasteful water by installing multi-stream rotary nozzles, pressure-regulated spray bodies, and programmed cycle and soak for the slope zone. This offers Mrs. Smith an endgame solution with less maintenance at the site. Additionally, her contractor made a larger profit by installing premium products with no added effort. But what do you do to create an endgame solution? And how do you get there? I'm sure you are all asking yourselves, will it be better for me, my workers, and my clients? To explain these important questions, let's begin with our first point from the summary, site analysis. Before you can present any solution to your customer, it's important to perform a site analysis so you understand what is happening at the site. Makes sense, right? This gives you helpful information when performing the later points like creating the design and choosing the products for the irrigation system. And before we get into the information for the site analysis, it's important to have the right tools. And an important tool to assist with performing the site analysis is an audit kit. These allow you to perform audits for the irrigation system and receive empirical data and understanding how efficient the system is, what products are being used, and how they are being used. Let's say, for example, if you get a number at the end of your audit about the efficiency and it's 40%, you can then pitch to the customer you can be at 60% efficiency if you perform this new design with these products. The potential for savings would be there with a more efficient system. Find a local distributor near you from an irrigation manufacturer's website to purchase an audit kit. Now that you have your audit kit, let's begin with the first item for site analysis, the water supply. Knowing what a customer has for their water supply is crucial for an efficient system. Are they using city water or are they using well water is just scratching the surface. Knowing the capacity of the water supply, like the total GPM and dynamic pressure, is even better. It helps determine how many valves they will need and how many sprinklers they could potentially put on a valve. A great point to discuss with your client in relation to the water supply is if customers are using well water and if they will need services for maintaining or installing filtration systems for their water supply. Another item to discuss in their water supply is usage conflicts. These could be related to specific watering days that are mandated. Having an irrigation system that can be efficient to keep the plant material alive is crucial if water restrictions are in effect in your area. Even if there are restrictions, try to time your irrigation when it's best. For example, pay attention to when it's windier in the day and avoid irrigating during that time. Also, avoid times when water is being used in other parts of the property. Try to avoid times when the dishwasher is running or someone might use the shower, which will consume some of your water supply. Next for your site analysis is plant material. What is Mrs. Smith irrigating? Is it grass, shrubs, or trees? All of these should be irrigated differently. And if these are all paired up with one valve, this presents a great opportunity to offer Mrs. Smith an option for a better solution to her irrigation needs. Another part of plant material, but kind of on its own, is focal plants. In this situation, Mrs. Smith has a weeping spruce. This item is a priority for her, which can offer an opportunity for extra business and help her with those needs. The opportunity for business with this situation will be for an installation of a new valve to isolate this plant's needs and to use premium low volume products to irrigate the focal plant. Next for our site analysis is how much sunlight and shade the areas of the landscape get. If one valve controls an area where half of it gets full sunlight and the other half is fully shaded, it presents another opportunity for your business to install a new valve because Mrs. Smith's landscape is suffering from being overwatered and underwatered, all because of sunlight and shade. Next for our site analysis is determining what soil the customer has. What soil they have determines how long it will take for the water to be absorbed into the soil. Also, how it will absorb. For example, sandy soil percolates water more vertically, while clay is more horizontal. The infiltration rate is different as well. Sandy soils flush water through the soil profile much faster than other soil types. It is very important to know these things because it will help determine what products to choose. In this case, with sandy soils, multi-stream rotary nozzles would be a great choice for a product in this soil type because they typically deliver water much slower. To determine what soil is on the site, you can perform a jar test. Get a soil sample from the site and fill it halfway with water. Thoroughly shake the jar, ensuring the soil is suspended. Allow settling for at least 2 hours. Then measure each layer to determine the percentage of each type. In ascending order, sand, loam, and clay. After soil, it's important also to consider the geography of the land. Does Mrs. Smith have flat areas to irrigate? No, turns out she doesn't. That changes her end game solution because now we must consider runoff on the slope. The last thing to consider in your site analysis is any other limitations that are not known. These are site-specific landscape qualities that only the customer could know or are difficult to know. Is there anything that is being missed that the owner is aware of that you aren't? Ask questions. Ask Mrs. Smith if something is being missed in the landscape that you should be aware of. Perhaps city sewage lines run through her property. That changes the landscape because in some cities you can't landscape over sewage lines. After a site analysis is performed, so you understand the landscape elements of the site, planning a design is next. The design plan is an important step to show your customer what the landscape will look like in terms of irrigated areas. You specify all your irrigation zones and how they will be irrigated. It details where things can be improved and where money can be invested to improve the efficiency of the landscape through the irrigation system. If more valves are required in the plan, this will cost more money for the client. To help sell to a customer the larger quoted job, describe to them the challenges you will experience along the way if you don't use an endgame solution to solve their problems. Provide them with the Band-Aid fix and what that looks like. Tell them about the issues they will have if they don't go with the endgame solution. For example, well, Mrs. Smith, if we do not go with this endgame solution, you will end up spending more money in the long run because the Band-Aid plan requires more maintenance. The design plan should discuss Hydrozones, what they are and why you need them. This is where the site analysis information will come into play and be very helpful. Let's use an example again. Let's say Mrs. Smith has 3 valves on her site and is irrigating 7 areas. She is fighting a battle where areas are too wet and too dry and plant material is suffering. She needs 7 valves for the 7 areas to have an efficient system. This is an opportunity to provide her with an efficient system and for you to make a profit with an endgame solution. First, describe to her why the problem is occurring, and next, the reason for splitting them up. You describe to her hydrozones. Well, the reason why you need to split them up, Mrs. Smith, is that these areas have specific site qualities that make them have different needs. The specific site qualities are plant types, plant water requirements, soil types, sunlight and shade, elevation, and the size of the area. Currently, all 3 valves that are irrigating the 7 areas have different qualities in a hydrozone, and that is why the plant material is suffering. For example, for your first valve, half of the area gets full sunlight, and the second half gets full shade. These halves should be separated. If we add more valves to accommodate your hydrozones, the plant material won't suffer, you won't be wasting as much water, and you will have a much more efficient system with a thriving landscape. Hydrozones give a great benefits to having a controlled irrigation system with this added flexibility of additional valves. Once she agrees, you can then show her in more detail the head spacing for the sprinkler layout. Head spacing is another important part of the design plan to show the customer where issues are located in the irrigation system and how they can be remedied. For example, part of Mrs. Smith's problem was with the grass zone. In one area, the heads were not spaced evenly, causing over and under watering. Show her that you need to evenly space out the sprinklers to get proper coverage. Adding a different nozzle may not always cure the problem. Installing the heads in proper locations is part of the endgame solution to fix her problem. The next point to consider is match precipitation for your design plan. The precipitation rate is the water that is being used in the soil profile. The issue that is seen in the field is that sprinklers with different precipitation rates are installed with the same valve. Understanding that the water being used in the soil is different from nozzle to nozzle is an important factor in the design. This is why rotors don't play nicely if the arcs are different on one valve, or if spray nozzles are paired with rotors on one valve. We will go into more detail about sprinkler choice in the next section, but it's important to understand from a hydraulic point the role that precipitation rates play. It can mean no longer having the hideous muddy soil in your front yard to a more aesthetically pleasing landscape. Another thing to consider in the design plan is the drip layout. Just like head spacing, knowing where the drip tubing is laid out is important for low volume irrigating. That being said, low volume areas should not be tied to high volume valves. Mrs. Smith once again has an issue with one of the areas because her shrubs are being irrigated by her grass sprinklers. Those should be on different valves because they have different watering requirements. They are different hydrozones. Describing to Mrs. Smith that installing drip tubing laterally in her garden bed is a much better way to irrigate is a great endgame solution. It provides her with an efficient irrigation system for the shrub's health and allows you to make more profit because you are installing more at the site. The last thing to consider in the design plan is the irrigation schedule. In our story with Mrs. Smith, the cause of the initial call was to help her with her wasted water on the slope. Programming a cycle and soak schedule into her controller will help with runoff from occurring in her situation. It gives more time for the water to absorb into the soil profile by reducing the irrigation cycle periods and waiting in between cycles of watering. After the design plan is finished and the customer understands the rough design for the irrigation system, they will probably want to know at some point what products they will be using. That is when the product plan comes in. The product plan provides a solution to answer why people will use higher end products to provide solutions to an efficient irrigation system. It goes beyond hydrozone areas and gets more into detail about providing endgame solutions to customers to specific landscape problems. Not everyone will need to split up areas with valves. Other people will need better products installed to have that endgame solution. This allows the contractor to increase profit because you can mark up your costs for using them. Additionally, in many applications, they do not use more labor to install than the Band-Aid fix products. The first product to upsell when planning for products has to do with pop-up height. One of the most common mistakes that are performed in designing and installing sprinklers is if the sprinkler will be able to pop up over the plant material to irrigate. The photo on the right demonstrates when the pop-up height affects the distribution of the water poorly. One pop-up height does not fit all applications. There are many pop-up height options to consider. The simple way to avoid this is to install sprinklers with a higher pop-up height. Choosing a taller riser allows you to irrigate more efficiently by clearing the plant material. Let's say you have chosen the right height, but your head is sunken down or your head is crooked. Now you correct it. The most efficient way to do this is to install a head with a swing joint. If you don't have a swing joint, it will make raising the head or straightening the sprinkler more painful. Not to mention, the swing joint helps prevent damage to the sprinkler if it were to get run over. If it does need to be raised up, you can dig around the head, lift it up, and straighten it, which is a lot less painless. If you don't, you could install riser nipples, but they do not protect the rotor from being run over like a swing joint. That's a Band-Aid fix. If you're doing a complete install, it is very important to consider installing swing joints for future maintenance calls. Another option is to use flexible tubing with spiral barb elbows to create your own swing joints. This helps save the installer money in the long run from potential callbacks and needing to repair sprinklers when they are broken, and easier to raise if it is sunken. Next up with rotors is using a stainless steel riser. This is a great upgrade with a higher end product for an application with large machinery. In installs where large mowers or tractors are used on residential sites, it's best to upgrade to the stainless steel pop-up. They are more rigid and durable and can withstand more wear and tear from these conditions. Additionally, these were created for harsh soil conditions and help prevent the riser from being scarred from debris. Stainless steel risers are just more reliable to pop up. It can mean avoiding having to go back and install new risers by installing stainless steel in the first place. Another great product to consider when planning to make an efficient irrigation system is check valves. A check valve's purpose is to not allow water to come out of the sprinkler after the valve shuts off. These are used primarily in low elevated spots in the landscape, where residual water in the pipe gravitates to the low spot and comes out of the sprinkler. This can all be avoided with a check valve. What's great about check valves now is that they come as factory installed options. So you don't have to thread a check valve onto the bottom of the sprinkler anymore. There can be one installed in the sprinkler to begin with. Another great option is that instead of keeping inventory of non-check valve products, you can simply keep check valve products in inventory to increase the space on your shelves. Check valves provide a great solution to a problem that doesn't cost you any more time and labor and can help make you more money with this upsell. Next are pressure regulating sprinklers. Regulating pressure at the sprinkler head allows each nozzle to see the same optimal pressure for balanced performance, higher uniformity, minimal misting, and lowers flow rates. When switching to pressure regulated spray bodies, you can have the potential of saving up to 30% in water savings. This is all from using the same size sprinkler, but using a pressure regulated form of it. Before the client may say no to this, it is also important to mention that it may be mandated in your area. Many states have started. For a full list of the states requiring this, visit the Appliance Standard Awareness Project website. The ASAP estimates that if every state adopted the water sense specification for lawn sprinklers as a standard by 2025, the US would save 141 billion gallons of water annually. Pressure regulated sprinklers are a fantastic way to save water and create a more efficient system while using the same amount of labor time and increasing your profits. Selecting which nozzle to use is very important during the product planning process as well. Many are designed for specific plants, soil types, and site needs. Choosing the correct one means getting the last part of the sprinkler to deliver the efficiency of the system for your client's landscape. Let's consider rotor nozzles first. Under normal conditions, standard nozzles for rotors are a terrific choice for most applications. They can cover areas larger than spray or multi-stream rotary nozzles, and provide an amazing way to save cost on labor for installation by minimizing the number of heads for the large area. On the other hand, if a residential site requires to be irrigated with rotors on slopes, low-angle nozzles are a great solution. These offer a great choice for delivering water to sloped landscapes. Next, we have spray nozzles. These are a great choice for applications with a pressure of around 30 psi. When at that pressure, they can deliver large droplets and do an outstanding job at applying water to the landscape. If you want to upsell, though, from spray nozzles, the multi-stream rotary nozzles would be a great choice. This premium product delivers water most efficiently with its lower precipitation rate, which eliminates runoff, has a high distribution uniformity, and has a larger water droplet size. The multiple streams allow the water to be delivered more uniformly and have a low match precipitation. Installers can choose different radius options from spray distances to short rotor distances, all in the same valve. This gives them great flexibility when installing. And not to mention, Mrs. Smith loves having her grandchildren over. And one of the things they love to do together is sit back in the morning and watch the pretty streams of water flowing through the landscape. Next, we have short radius nozzles. Short radius nozzles qualify as microsprays for pop-ups since they flow under 30 gallons an hour at 30 psi across the family of nozzles. This probably only affects those regions pushing microproducts in small spaces, but these are really great low flow spray nozzles for small areas and planters. Bubbler nozzles are a great choice with low volumes of water for spot irrigating trees as well. This is an important product for some regions like California, where zones are split up more in xeriscape landscapes. It allows water to be applied specifically to the tree, helping deep watering. And they come in two different models for ease of installation. One to thread onto pop-up sprinklers, and one to half-inch nipple risers. The last item to cover in product planning is drip zone valves. Product planning for these items presents great opportunities for increasing profitability and efficiency. When planning for micro irrigation systems, it's important to have appropriate filtration and pressure. Drip zone valves have filtration and pressure regulation in one for the convenience of installation. Whenever a low volume of water is needed on site, consider using drip zone valves to upsell from a normal valve. After the plans are implemented and the renovation or maintenance project is finished, what else can be done? Mrs. Smith, I'm sure, loved having you as a dependable contractor, but I am sure she would appreciate your business long-term. Your post-plan contributes to that. The first thing to consider in post-planning is advertisements. Installers can't keep a sign in someone's yard for the entire time they are renovating the landscape or performing maintenance. They can put company stickers on their irrigation controller, which provides a great way for homeowners to contact installers. It can be a cumbersome process at times to keep track of paperwork and contact details for installations and renovations. A company sticker on a controller is a much easier way to know who installed the system and how to get a hold of the installer. What's great also is that in many applications, when a homeowner needs to talk to the contractor, they need to be on site, and that is exactly where the sticker is. The homeowner can be ready for any questions the contractor might have for the customer additionally. But what is best is that it is a cheap advertisement for future opportunities. If a homeowner sells a house and the new owner does not like the design of the landscape, either they want more grass or less grass, an irrigation design will be needed, and they have contact info for who to call. Another thing that can be done after the installation is to support your customers with checkups. Some of this comes in the cadence of a monthly, quarterly, or annual checkup, whatever the site may need to stay efficient. Now that this industry has become more IoT, this can now be done through water management software on your phone. Additionally, with support, many product manufacturers have great sales, customer service, technical service, and online support pages to help you before, during, or after the installation, some of which are free of charge too. It is important to understand that the manufacturer is your partner and contractors can take advantage of the great services that they offer because profitability is aligned with support from the manufacturer. Reach out to your product manufacturer for details regarding the services they offer. In summary, when a problem occurs for a customer, this creates a great opportunity to not provide a customer with a quick Band-Aid fix. It provides an opportunity for a great end-game solution for the customer to have an efficient irrigation system and for you as the contractor to increase your profits. Additionally, you are elevating the industry in general by installing something that looks more professional from a professional. Thank you. At this time, I would love to answer any questions. If we're not able to get to some of the questions, you can always follow up. I have my email here on the screen. Please feel free to email me at any time. So let's have a look. Do I need to sign in somewhere in order to receive CEUs? Rob, I think that might be a question for you. Do we have any questions from the audience potentially, please, pertaining to increasing profitability through irrigation efficiency?
Right. Looks like we have a hand raised. Angel, if you don't mind, could you please enter your question into the chat box so I can read it off to Aaron? Thank you. Anyone else? Now's the time. We have about 30 minutes on our schedule for Q&A.
First question is return of investment for the client. That depends on several factors. If they're needing a complete overhaul, that'll change from if they just need something kind of more quick with just maybe installing a new product. So that kind of is all site specific. We have another question. What states do you feel are doing a good job on enforcing irrigation efficiency? Great question. Very, very good question. I would say let's refer back to the Appliance Standard website. Those folks are doing a great job just because they're enforcing or helping to enforce pressure regulated spray bodies. So anytime we do that, you're going to help out with having a more efficient system because you're not putting out as much water as you potentially would need. So right now, California has one. I think New Jersey is next on the map too. I'm sure it won't be too much farther down the road where we'll end up seeing a lot more states that are going to be involved doing that too. Good question. Next, we have James. Have you used or recommended any online sprinkler head spacing calculators? Great question. So I haven't personally from my backyard, but I do know that there are some available. One of which, not necessarily pertaining to spacing, but there are calculators online that you can find for like run times. That's what I'm thinking of when I see this question. So if you were going to do a design for a customer, you can go to just type in runtime calculator on Google. And I know that Hunter Industries has a calculator. I'm sure others do too. And you just put in information pertaining to the site. Valves they have, the nozzles they're using, so they know the precipitation rates, and then it'll generate a schedule for you. You also have to put in like slope, the geography of the land too. So cycle and soak may be inputted into that schedule additionally. Good question. Next question, Pete Mankins. What are your thoughts on upselling the smart water system with Hydrowise controllers? So right now, the industry is definitely changing towards IoT stuff, like I mentioned in the presentation. Everybody wants to have their irrigation system on their phone. It's kind of a cool thing to do, I think, just to be able to show your client, like, look, I can turn on your zone from my phone here. So I think it actually is a great asset to have. It would be a good upsell to have, not to mention a lot of controllers additionally. You can get notifications for electrical problems. And if you install a flow meter, hydraulic problems too. So if your customer is vacationing in Acapulco or something, they can be notified right away, hey, there's a break on valve 2. And then it'll be notified, hey, we're going to suspend the zone or what have you. So no, very good. I would suggest potentially doing that as well. Next question, would suggesting a decoder type system provide a better upsell and profitability? Great question. I think this applies more towards properties that are maybe a little bit larger. A suburban environment, probably not. You're not going to see the return on investment for you with that one. But I think with properties that are quite larger, I'm thinking of maybe the term just estates, someone that has an estate, then that would be something to consider. So you'll have to do the math, unfortunately, to determine how much wire you'll need for that if you're going to run multi-strand cabling versus 2-strand for the 2-wire and decoders. Next question. Does Hunter offer any digital tools to calculate saving of adding and the stuff you mentioned, i.e. PRS 6-inch pop-up, MPs, and so on? No, we do not, but that's a really good question. So part of Hunter's values, one of them is innovation. I mean, our company started with innovating the rotor, and we extend that offer to contractors, homeowners, distributors, anybody outside of the company. There's a portion on our website. If you scroll down to the bottom under corporate, it says open innovation and ideas. If you click there, I would suggest maybe putting in this idea. And this could potentially be something that we create with our creative team in marketing. Good question. I like it. Next, how do I get an MP 800 short radius throw 6 feet like it says in the catalog? So it needs to be at 30 PSI. 30 PSI, and you can bring it down to 6 feet. Next question, Matthew Frazier. I am a key holder and manager with Ace Hardware here in San Jose. Does Hunter or IA do on-site product knowledge seminars for sales associates and management teams? On-site. I know that's something potentially that like our sales team could do. I'm aware of them doing something of that effect. Rob might be able to answer that with IA. I'm not sure if you want to step in there, Rob.
Not at the moment. If you'd like to ask that question to Irrigation, education@irrigation.org, please do, and we can get that answered for you.
Next question, Jamie Rios. Have you found that irrigation audits are required prior to occupancy of new projects? Great question. I think if you want to be able to upsell a project to someone who has a poorly efficient system, it's not going to be difficult to do that with an audit. You can easily show them, hey, this is how poor your irrigation system is running. We can see the empirical numbers, the empirical data coming in with this audit. This is where we can be with this new design. So it's just a tool for you to be able to present to your customer to upsell them. I'm sure a lot of times it might be, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend the money, but it's like, hey, like here's the data. Here's really the info that I'd like to show to you to convince them. Next question. How much overlap do you suggest when laying out heads? I would say one, no more than 2 feet. When is the best time of day or night to irrigate? That kind of depends too. Good question. So I would say pick times of day where it's not going to disturb the irrigation. So the first thing that I think of is wind. I don't want to irrigate when it's super windy because it's going to disturb the distribution. So typically people are irrigating in the morning. Next, what are your thoughts on subterranean irrigation, EcoMat, and how well does it work with turf? Well, that's what it's designed for. The EcoMat is designed for irrigating turf, and the distribution is pretty much nearly 100%. So it performs very, very well. Next, are you going to start developing real-time flow in your timers? That's an interesting question. So in order to have real-time flow, you obviously need a flow sensor. So that's something that can't really be done if it were just to kind of automatically be in the timer. You need the two separate pieces. At Hunter, we have several different controllers that can do real-time flow monitoring, but you just need that extra sensor. So like our ACC2 controllers, our HydroWise controllers can do that, minus the X2 with wand. So yeah, that can be done. You just need the extra sensor. Probably not something that's going to be developed because you need the extra part. Next, is it worth adding a smart controller before making field improvements? That's a good question. Prior to this question, we were talking about that as an upsell. I know having one installed makes it a lot easier to turn on zones. You can be away from the site, or excuse me, away from the controller. But if the controller, for example, has remote capabilities, so I know with ours, you can put like a smart port on and then use our Roam or Roam XL remote, you can then turn things on. So if you already have that ready, it may not be needed now. But if you don't, then it could definitely be something to do before you start digging trenches. Great questions, guys. Really enjoying this. Next, is there a guide for potential water savings per product group? For example, pressure regulation, check valves, weather-based controllers, etc. Is there a guide for potential water savings per product? You know, that's a good question too. I'm not sure that we do. So a lot of times with water savings, it kind of depends on also how much water are you wasting. So I would say before you get into that with like a customer, examine really, okay, what's going on the site, and then you can kind of move forward with that. But just in general, we don't have anything listed there. Next question, does the Hydrowise software help show savings to the end customer? It does. So on the home screen, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's controller status, and it shows you water savings. And that is a bit of eye candy there to show your customer how much water you've been using and how much water you could potentially be and save, but also how much extra you're wasting. So what it does is it takes the weekly schedule and uses that for its 100% of irrigation. Let's say it rains and a trigger is used, it will then cancel an irrigation cycle. You'll see that water savings tick up. If you perform a manual operation, it's going to go down. So yes, it does. Home screen, scroll down to the bottom to controller status. Jake Elliott, how to upsell people to convert to drip when they're being able to see the sprays were on that morning because of water on the side. Well, that's just a great way to present it to them. If they have a small planter and you see a lot of wasted water, that's a great opportunity to show them, hey, this water can be used for the plant instead of the concrete. So they could potentially be irrigating less and not using as much water resources, electricity, and put the water where it's supposed to go. Next, Angel, would you recommend adding top quality products to a cheaper system? For instance, in Sacramento, I noticed most homeowners have an Orbit system, and I typically use Hunter products. I've been told that Orbit sprinkler heads are not pressure regulated, so would adding Hunter products throw off the pressure in the system? No, it won't. It'll help the system. I mean, if they have a Orbit controller or Orbit valve, it's not going to hurt the system if you put on like a Hunter spray body is kind of what we're tying the question to. It'll only benefit it. Next, here in California, where water restrictions are needed but extreme, it seems like water rates and enforcement of water restrictions with penalties are still lacking and don't outweigh the initial cost of the irrigation improvements. How do we convince the clients that their investment is justified? That's a great question. Very, very good question. So I think what folks are starting to do now, and I mentioned this in the slides, is that they're going more towards like a zero landscape. With grass, you got to irrigate a lot more. With shrubs, you don't. And so changing to a more xeriscape landscape with shrubs and planters can be the way to do that. You can pitch them, hey, let's get rid of this grass then if you don't want to be restricted and have the landscape suffer with more of a xeriscape landscape with shrubs and flowers, and you can have that micro irrigation system. Next, with watering restrictions in the state of California, the water windows are approximately 12 to 16 hours. That combined with watering day restrictions, this creates an incentive to install systems that apply water at a much faster rate than is ideal for clay or clay loam soils. The question, I'm not sure what the question is. Let's read it again. With watering restrictions in the state of California, the water windows are approximately 12 to 16 hours. That combined with watering day restrictions, this creates an incentive to install the systems that apply water at a much faster rate than is ideal for clay or clay loam soils. And I'm not sure what I get the point. I'm not sure the question behind it. If you can, please email me. I would love to be able to figure out what's going on and answer any questions you might have. You do offer water saving calculator? Yes, very good. Point source or subsurface on a slope. Okay, point source or subsurface on slope. Depends on what you're irrigating a bit and also how it's being applied. So with a slope, if it's all ground cover, I would say a subsurface would be better. If it's just shrubs, just kind of sticking out of the ground, point source would be the way to go. Rusty James, why do the MP rotator nozzles stop spinning or a very slow spin when radius is lowered? And is there a trick to get them spinning again? I would love to see those nozzles. Generally, the more pressure you have, the faster it will spin. So if the pressure is at 25 PSI on one valve for one section, the other is, I don't know, 50 is going to go faster. Over time with municipalities, but in residential tract homes, sometimes new developments occur and that consumes water supply. So the pressure can decrease. So if you're saying that, hey, this is happening now after I install them, I'm not sure if anything was built and it's now consumed some water supply and the pressure's dropped and now it's just spinning slower. But something to consider, there is an MP gauge that is sold by Hunter. You can stick it on the Pro Spray, put the MP on top to verify what the pressure is. That would be a step that would need to be performed to verify why it is spinning slower. Next, what is your feeling about rain sensors and soil sensors on residential systems to help both upsell and provide water savings efficiency? Very good. There are customers out there that don't want IoT systems. They don't want to use their phone. They're old school. Give me the dial. Let me turn it so I can change something. But at the same time too, they want something that can just automatically shut it off. So having a sensor is a great way to upsell to them to promote that automatic shut off. Next question, what talking points can be used to upsell a spot irrigating tree with bubblers up to RZWS? Great question. RZWS, great product for irrigating trees. It allows oxygen to get in. It allows the water to be distributed straight to the roots because it's basically trenched right next to the bulb of the tree. So I would say if a customer has a focal plant, right, because this is a very premium bubbler product, I would suggest putting these in. Next, is a weather station really worth the cost? I think you're talking about weather stations with Hydrowise. So in Hydrowise, you can select a weather station for the general location of where you're at. And this gives you the information from the general spot on rainfall, evapotranspiration, etc. In some areas where weather stations aren't close by, so maybe you have a strange microclimate, you're not going to have a weather station that may be as reliable. Now you can pick airport weather stations, that is free of charge. Personal weather stations, you have to pay for an enthusiast plan, or if you just want to use one, so if you want to install one on your own, you can be upgraded for free to use one personal weather station. That's when this comes in. So if you're in that microclimate or the airport weather station is not going to be reliable, that's when I would say get one. Or if your customer is like, I just want the best, or you want to get all the information exactly at the spot, exactly where the controller is, then yes, get the weather station. You can upgrade the client for free. Just contact technical services. They can upgrade your customer's account for free to use the one personal weather station. Good question. Can you be on the app for the controller as well as the homeowner? Yes, you can. HydroWise is a cloud software product. So that means you can log into the account from anywhere in the world without disturbing an employee of yours or a customer of yours when they're logged in. Next, we have Rami Khalil. If we use a pressure regulated sprinkler, would that cancel the need to have a pressure regulator on the solenoid valve? Possibly. It depends on what the pressure is, but I kind of see your point. Like if you have a pressure regulation, or if it's pressure regulated at the valve at like 40 PSI and you're using MPs or multi-stream rotary nozzles, those perform best at 40 PSI. It kind of does defeat the purpose of having them. But the great thing about the spray body is that you're getting the exact pressure out of that head for every single sprinkler, right? And that's the point of them too. When water is flowing through the pipe, you lose pressure. When water goes through a sprinkler head, you lose pressure. So at the beginning of the line, the pressure is not going to be the same at the end. So if you want that consistency, it's better to go with the pressure regulation in the spray body. Good question. Zach, on average, are drip installs more expensive than spray heads for plants? I am not sure the answer to that question. I am not sure. Please email me, Zach, and I'd like to follow up on you with that one. I'm not sure off the top of my head with that. I suppose it may depend, maybe from state to state. Guys are using more drip versus guys are doing spray heads, but I'll have to do some noodling on that one. Matthew Frazier, good morning. Thank you for the information. Just emailed IA with my request. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. I'll get back to you within the week.
Good. Okay, with watering restrictions in the state of California, the water windows are approximately 12 to 16 hours. That combined with watering day restrictions. Okay, here we go. So this is the complete question, I think. So let's start over. With watering restrictions in the state of California, the water windows are approximately 12 to 16 hours. That combined with watering day restrictions, this creates an incentive to install systems that apply water at much faster rate than is ideal for clay or clay loam soils. Continuing on this, it seems the solution is to design and spray systems over multi-stream rotors and to use higher flow emitter line. Also, it does not encourage the use of smart controllers. Suggestions? I'm not sure. I'm not sure for that. I mean, I would think maybe if you had 50 valves or something, but those are usually on commercial sites. I mean, if we're talking residential site here, that's a pretty big watering window. So I think there is ample time to be able to do that. So I don't think that that is necessarily accurate. It's potentially something to consider if you have a large site, but I don't think this applies to most. But good question still. Very, very good question. Next, Robert Kirk, you mentioned 2-foot overlap. Is that for sprays? How much overlap do you recommend for MP rotators? I would say just generally 1 to 2 feet. Don't go past that or you end up over irrigating, seeing a lot more overspray and soggier areas. Are rotors or MP better in a windy area? I would say MPs perform better in a windier area over rotors. But then again, you can always install rotors with like low angle nozzles to get below that wind. I know not all sprinkler valves are made the same, but do you think Hunter would ever make a jar top anti-siphon valve to easily screw off and service if the diaphragm needs to be cleaned or replaced? Taking off the screws, the 6 or 7 screws is a pain. Sometimes the top doesn't make a great seal once it has been taken off. I feel you. Yeah, that can be very, very painful. Another kind of pain point with jar tops, it's kind of difficult to unscrew too. If you use channel locks, you can kind of tear out those little ribs on the side of it. I think with this question, it kind of depends on the market. If the market would want to have something like this, then I don't see why that wouldn't be something that we could consider. So I would say, put the idea in our open innovations page. So once again, on Hunter Industries website, towards the bottom, there's a section labeled corporate, and it's labeled open innovations and ideas. Submit that idea. I think it's something to potentially consider. Next, what is the max safe daily water window in hours to avoid turfgrass disease? In large commercial projects, we don't want to start too early in the morning, but we need to complete the cycle before sunrise. So we are not pathologists. I'm not sure we can speculate on that. I would say maybe reach out to a pathology lab local to you, and they could potentially give you a better answer. What about the virtual weather station option on Hydrowise? Good question. So to help with that issue that I was talking about prior, with that microclimate, you're away from the airport weather station, we developed a virtual weather station. That is something that can be used additionally. When you go through the step of setting up the controller, it's asked during the setup wizard if you want Hydrowise to select the weather station, or if you want to select it yourself. If you ask Hydrowise to do it, we're going to select the virtual weather station. That is definitely an option. But then again, if you're in a microclimate or you're away from personal weather stations, you probably are not going to get the most reliable info from it still. Jake Elliott, you're posting a lot of questions. I like it. Why don't your timers turn zones off when the flow sensor detects higher than 30% of average flow? They do. So I'd like to know which ones you're talking about. The flow click seems obsolete and should be integrated into any timer that detects flow, correct? Why lose all the water if the timer already detects? Yeah, I agree, 100%. Ours do though. Hydrowise, when it first came out with flow, it didn't, but we incorporated that it would, and you have the option of selecting if you want to shut off or not. So that's something that when we did beta testing with all of our products, the majority of contractors did want that, and we have implemented them. Next, spray heads, NPR or rotors on the same size area. Which one is the best for different soil quality? There's a lot more that needs to go into answering this question. I think if the area was very, very large, I would say, probably go with more rotors because they cover larger areas. Spray heads go up to about 17 feet. MPs can go short, almost, 6 feet with a specific pressure rating, and then up to 35 feet for corners with the MP 3500. So a lot more kind of needs to go into answering this question. It's somewhat vague, so I can only give you kind of general answers to it. But if you want direct answers, email me. Love to help answer them. I don't trust virtual solar sync. Can you sell me on the option right now? Good question. Virtual solar sync. First, let's talk about solar sync. Solar sync is an ET sensor. It is not a Penman-Monteith type sensor. It uses solar radiation, temperature, sunlight, and humidity to adjust the run times based on that environmental information. So we incorporated that technology into Hydrowise. So SolarSync has been trusted and verified for many, many, many years now. Rather than having to buy a sensor for your customer, which is going to cost them more money, you can always get a Hydrowise, which sounds like they probably already have, and then use virtual SolarSync. No sensor needed. You just click the option to use it, and it's done. So if the customer wants to have a lot of adjustability within their system, they want a more a set it and forget it, which is kind of I think a bad word because you still need to somewhat maintain, see how things are operating. But if they want more adjustability, virtual SolarSync is the best option in Hydrowise for the watering types. So there's smart watering and advanced. They have virtual SolarSync and time-based, which are in advanced and in standard mode. The one that does the most adjustment is virtual solar sync. So that's what we recommend, because most customers that go with HydroEyes have an IoT type product. They want that. They want the most adjustability. So virtual solar sync is the cookie to choose. Very good questions.
All very good
Next slide.
questions. Thank you, Aaron. I think that's the last open question we have in the chat box, which is great because we just reached that 3 o'clock mark. So everyone, it looks like we're out of time. Thank you for attending, and please don't forget to check out our website for upcoming webinars throughout the year. A big thanks to Aaron for sharing his knowledge with us today, and to Hunter Industries for sponsoring the webinar. If you have any questions that we did not answer, please feel free to email them to education@irrigation.org or to reach out to Aaron directly. And if we can't answer them, we'll make sure to pass them on to the appropriate team member. This concludes our webinar. Have a nice day, everyone. Thanks again, Aaron.
My pleasure.